And Yaakov is preempting the showdown. He understands, he's concerned that it might not end well for him. And so he kind of is setting up a way to hopefully avoid a very dangerous situation. And so he sends these malachim to inquire where Esav heads at. And he's certainly very concerned that Esav is going to be out to kill him. Which is fascinating because this story takes place, and kill him because Yaakov had taken his bracha. Yaakov took Esav's bracha 22 years ago. You know, for a lot of people, you may have a lot of grudges, but I don't know if people necessarily hold up in 22 years. And Yaakov, it seems, was as concerned that Esav would kill him, like the day that Yaakov had to run away from Esav. And you'd think that maybe Yaakov would say, you know what? After a while, you know, people still let bygones be bygones, or he won't meet up with the same Esav, with the same, you know, angry Esav. And yet we see Yaakov doesn't consider that situation at all. And from here you see a really scary thought. And that is that people don't change. You know, sometimes people tell you, they went to their high school, the 15th high school union, and the same klutz or the same clown or it's the same all over, the same guy all over again. And you know, that's a scary thought only in the sense that, you know, coming from a rabbi, you're not just from a rabbi. Judaism believes in change. You're always trying to improve yourself and grow. So when I say people don't change, what does that mean? What that really means is people don't change unless they make an effort to change. A person will be the same person, that's a scary thought, that he was 20 years earlier, if there's no concerted effort on their part to introspect and to try to improve themselves. Otherwise, they'll be the exact same person. And what a frightening thought for somebody who looks back and says, you know what, I'm the same person I was 20 years ago. That's a frightening thought. My brother once told me that he met up with Rev Kreisworth, this took place a number of years back in New Hampshire, in Bethlehem, New Hampshire. My brother was just there visiting for a little bit, touring, whatever the case is. And it seems Rev Kreisworth was there for a couple of days to rest up. And Bethlehem, in those days, maybe 15 years ago actually there was a hotel there that a lot of Orthodox people visited. It became like almost a very kind of a Orthodox enclave there for the summertime, for vacation time. So Rev Kreisworth was there. Rev Kreisworth was the chief rabbi of Belgium. He was a brilliant man, genius person. And so my brother was very surprised to see Rev Kreisworth in the hotel at the same time. He went over, gave him shalom lechem. Right. Next morning, he gets up and he sees Rev Kreisworth still there. So he's very happy. He goes and says, by the way, shalom lechem, the same person that, I said hello to you yesterday. So the rabbi looked and goes, I hope you're not the same person that I said shalom to yesterday, right? I hope today you're a little bit different than you were yesterday. I hope your davening today is a little bit different than it was yesterday. It's not going to be a huge difference, but something should be different about your davening today. It should not be a copy of yesterday. There should be something nuanced difference. But we can expect a guy like Esav, or the Esavs of the world, to be the exact same people that they were 20 years ago. In fact, the word Esav comes from the word asui. Asui means to be complete. Esav saw himself as a complete individual. There's nothing for me, like an animal doesn't develop. I mean, they physically get bigger, but there's no development. Esav also has a gematria of shalom, which means complete. Like Esav, so this is who I am. I am who I am. Gemara says, Shar ben yomo ikri shar. The Gemara talks about karbanos wise, an age of a carbon, and the Gemara says, when the Torah says a shar, how old is that shar? So Gemara says, Shar ben yomo, a shar that's 1 day old is called a shar. And this became like a phrase, a euphemism to say, a shar is an ox when it's 1 day old, and an ox is the exact same ox when it's 2 years later. And Esav says, I'm the same person, I'm no different than the animal, that's the exact same animal, maybe physically bigger and fatter, but I'm not inherently different. And so, it's a scary thought if a person could look back and say, I'm the same person I was 20 years ago and I haven't changed. That's a frightening thought. But that's exactly what Yaakov anticipated with an Esav, that he'd meet the exact same person, because Esav was not looking to grow. That's a really, a frightening message, but an important message.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Isn't there also something else going on with this? And that's perhaps that Yaakov is feeling guilty, and that guilt hasn't gone away in 22 years.
That's an interesting point. I think, I hesitate to say this, but often we look at the patriarchs, the matriarchs in the same way that we kind of would feel ourselves. and we put ourselves in their position or themselves in our position, and we say, I feel this kind of guilt. But we're making that mistake when we do that. I remember we had, I met somebody a number of years back, and they were talking about Parashat Vieshlach2, actually, that's in Parasha. And they said, oh, Rabbi, I just had a class a couple of days ago. I said, fine, who led the class? He said, nobody. I said, so how does that work? I said, well, no, we're a bunch of lay people, and we sit around a table, and somebody's a psychologist, so they give us a psychological view, and somebody's a sociologist, somebody's a scientist, and it's sad because, and I don't, they mean well, certainly, but we can't, say, well, I know what an Oedipus complex is, so they must have had an Oedipus complex, right? Or the Parsha with Yosef, the brother, is a class example. Oh, I know what sibling rivalry is. Sibling rivalry is, we see what it is today, and we just simply project sibling rivalry by the brothers too. And certainly, that nothing be further from the truth. It's not your classic, what we see today, sibling rivalry. And I don't know that, I don't see anywhere, I haven't seen Chazal where it says that Yaakov was feeling guilty. In fact, we'll see shortly that the Chazal actually hold him accountable for even trying to meet up with Esav. They should have just left Esav alone. It is true that Yaakov, I think we talked about this last week, or 2 weeks ago actually, when Yaakov took the bracha from Esav, it did cause Esav pain. And because he caused him pain, even though it was inadvertent, and even though he had no choice in the matter, he was instructed by Rivka, the fact that he caused him pain, there is going to be retribution. We talk about this in Bein Adma Chaveria, when you deal with somebody, in laws governing people, if you cause somebody pain, even if it's inadvertent and it's unintentional, unless you make amends, there's going to be a boomerang effect on you as well. That's the given. It's kind of like when you stick your hand in a fire, it could be unintentional. Your hand's getting burnt, you cause somebody pain, unless you make amends, and Yaakov did cause Esav pain, and we talked about that. I think we said that it played this way in history many years later when Haman causes pain to Mordechai, and he used the exact same expression. By Yitzhak tzaka gedalu mora, Abni Oid. He used the exact same expression when it says when Esav found he lost the bracha. It says by Yitzhak, he cried out a bitter cry. The exact same expression is used by Mordechai when he hears Haman's decree. So there is payback in that sense, but I don't know if guilt is necessarily the case. But what I do want to say is that there's another thing. So Yaakov prepares for this encounter, and how does he prepare? So we know, Chazal tell us, he had a three-pronged approach, right? He prepares militarily, he's got to make his establishment, make his legitimate efforts, and he divides the camp in two so one camp could escape. He obviously prays, Tefillah understands that it's going to be, Eilu Barach Ve'elu Zusa V'nachla B'Shem Hashem Naskir, many nations just go with their chariots. We go with the name of Hashem as well. We have to also obviously daven to Hashem. And the third thing he does, he sends them gifts, right? And that's his hand at diplomacy, basically. So he tries it's the classic example of the olive branch and the stick at the same time. So he prepares militarily, but he also extends the olive branch diplomacy by sending gifts. And what's really fascinating, about these gifts. When Esav sees all these gifts, what's his reaction when he sees his gifts? Does he say, wow, Yaakov remembered my birthday. What a swell guy. No, he's not thinking that. When Esav sees his gifts, what is he thinking? Why is Yaakov sending me these gifts? And you know what he's saying? Because he wants to flatter me. Because he wants to bribe me. Right? Clearly, Esav's no dummy. Why is out of the blue, 22 years later, when Yaakov's coming home sending gifts? Because he wants to flatter me. He wants to butter me up. Now, couldn't you butter somebody up when they know you're trying to butter them up? Or they say, listen, you butter me up. Come on, I'm not going to fall for this, right? That doesn't work, right? Wrong. It works very well. Human nature is such that when you get flattered, you feel good, even if you know the person's trying to flatter you. When you flatter your boss, and he knows you're doing it because you want a promotion, because it still makes him feel good. It doesn't make sense, but that's the power of the ego. And that's why, by the way, chanifa, flattery, is a prohibition in the Torah. If you don't mean it, it's so highly manipulative, there's a prohibition. You can't flatter people because it's such a manipulative thing. You push that button of flattery, and people are feeling great about this, even as they know they're being flattered. It's the classic, the human being is able to rationalize all behaviors, and they can know that they're fooling themselves and still feel good about it. There's a famous story about a great sage. His name was Chaim Shmulevitz. Shmulevitz escaped from the war, after the war, and he went from Shanghai to Eretz Yisrael, and he was one of the great pillars of the Mir Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael for the longest time. Anyway, so as a younger man, he and a number of other students would, Friday night, they would study together in the home, I think, of maybe the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, I forgot who it was really, and they would share different Torah on the parasha. And somebody said an idea from Reb Chaim Brisker. Reb Chaim Brisker was a very famous Reb Chaim Brisker, but they share the same first name, but there's no relationship. And he shared this different Torah, the Rav who was hosting this parsha get together said, Reb Chaim zok shein the Torah, which means Reb Chaim, that's the Brisker, always has beautiful Torah insights. Said Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, the young boy, I knew when he said Reb Chaim says beautiful Torah, he didn't mean me. He was referencing that, and I knew that everybody in the room knew he didn't mean me, and I knew that everybody in the room knew that I knew that he didn't mean me. And I still felt good when I heard the words. Right? It's a remarkable thing how flattery works. And so Esav knows he's being flattered, and it still works. It still works. And Yaakov, and that's a tribute to his ego. Obviously, if you don't have that ego, and Reb Chaim on his smaller level had that as well. But the bigger the ego, the more you fall for it. Clearly, I'm not getting into politics, but a guy like Trump, right? It doesn't make a difference. You tell him something that flatters him, he's trying to flatter him, he still feels good about it. That he just needs to feed his ego. And Esav, this feeds his ego. This clearly feeds his ego. And so therefore he sends him gifts, and it works. And that's the power of the ego and the power of rationalization. We rationalize. We somehow, we don't connect the dots. We don't want to connect the dots. We just see what we want to see. In this case, yep, he's flattered me, I'm feeling good about myself, and that's what it is. Okay, so Yaakov sends to Esav this message. Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yaakov essentially stole the bracha of wealth from Esau by impersonating.
Correct.
Okay? My interpretation, which I've picked up from various Divrei Torah, is that in giving all the gifts to Esau, what Yaakov was doing teshuvah and giving back the wealth that he had gotten that should have gone to Esau. And it was the wealth from outside of Eretz Israel that he gave back. He kept the wealth that he earned in Israel, but the wealth that he got from Laban.
There is some talk about that. There is something like that. I wouldn't. Yeah, it's possible. I want to share with you maybe a different perspective of that. Yaakov is not callous with his money. He understands that anything that he earns means God wants him to have that, and it's a purpose. In fact, that's why later on, when he crosses the river and brings his family over the river, and he realizes he forgot this one little jar back, right? He goes back for that one jar. Why? What are you going back for one jar? You're a wealthy man. Why are you going back for this one little jar? By the way, it says pachim ketana, which means small jars. Mm-hmm. Which actually the Sfarim talk about, it's really reference to Hanukkah, because Hanukkah also had these pachim of shemen, and it's some allusion to the Hanukkah story. We'll see where the connection might be. But the Rabbeinu Bachai has an interesting pshat. Pachim ketanim, he learns pachim are jars, ketanim small jars. But Rabbeinu Bachai learns it's pachim shel ketanim. It's baby bottles. It's bottles of babies. You went back to get the baby bottles. That you don't want to mess with, right? You got to get those baby bottles. Otherwise, the kid, you want to have that Passover for the kid, you're done. So he's got to go back for the Passover. But the bottom line is, the reason why he's going back is because he recognizes that everything Hashem sent him has a purpose. And we don't throw away money if that's what God gives us. That means it's there for a purpose. But we'll see that he and Esav have a totally different view about money. Yeah?
How is this gifting any different from Elazar?
I'm sorry?
Eliezer, when he went for Rivka.
Yeah.
He had his gifts also. But how is it different? How would you define it?
Eliezer wasn't trying to bribe. I think that in those days, especially in that culture, the way you married somebody off was offering, dowries, and that was the way of proposing a marriage. Look, that was the exchange, so to speak. So I don't.
Are we flattering them? They have so much money for you guys. So we have.
It's an interesting question. I see what you're saying. I don't think it was flattery. I think it was a way of telling her you're going to be able to go into a comfortable marriage. You're going to, but I don't know if it's, I don't call it flatter. I think we do that today. You know, well, not today so much, but certainly the idea of providing a dowry and saying, listen, we're going to be able to make this work for you. I know yes.
Doesn't the dowry,
but you're right. But you are right, by the way.
The dowry goes the other way.
Yeah, but it's the same, but still the idea of, it's not just a question of dowry. It's a question of providing for a marriage or a family. But you are right that you shouldn't be blinded by the money. I agree with you that if you know somebody has a great situation with money and you say, oh, I want to marry them for that reason, then you're being blinded. And you have to be careful that it's not a bribe. You're absolutely right. I think that's true. You have to be careful that you don't see it as a bribe. And Lavan, by the way, did see it as a bribe. Lavan clearly was just enticed by the money. There's no question about that. All right? Right? That's certainly true. But what's interesting is when Esav meets up with Yaakov, we'll see later on, and we're going to come back because we have to still do with Yaakov and the struggle with the angel. But just to follow along this line, Yaakov says to Esav, "Yesh li kol," which means I have everything. Esav says, "Yesh li rav," which means I have lots of stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's those words, just the word rav versus the word kol. Yesh li rav, have lots of stuff, versus Yaakov's yesh li kol is a whole different world. Esav shares with Yaakov the idea that I see materialism as more. What's life all about? If I asked, not just teenagers, if I asked, in my school, if I asked the young adults, if you had $5 million, what would you do with it? And everyone's talking about, well, I'll buy this, like collect, and then what? We are trained to be consumers, and really that's not what life's all about. We're supposed to be producers, not consumers. Life is about being productive, but we're trained to just simply consume more and more and more. And that's the world of Esav, which is yesh li rav. I have lots of stuff, and it's all about stuff and more stuff. Rav, just a mass amount of stuff. I want to keep collecting massive amounts of stuff. Yaakov's yesh li kol. I have all that I need. I understand that everything I have here is for a purpose, and there's a need for it. But Esau's whole viewpoint of money and things is about power, and the more I have, the more power I have, and I got to keep collecting more stuff. But for Yaakov, it's yesh li kol. But even more than that, it's interesting. Esau is not only, he sees all this wealth of Yaakov, and he says, I don't get it. Like, you weren't into this world. You're into the world to come, right? And Yaakov says, and he says, Milacha, who are these children? And Yaakov says, Asher chanani Elokim. This is everything I have as I've been graced by God. And so Yaakov says something very fascinating that Esav doesn't understand. In the world of Esav, everything's about power. Money is power, stuff is power. Even children is about power. Esav, we know, was known for kibbud av v'em, right? Esav was incredible. In fact, there was one Amora that said, I wish I could honor my parents as well as Esav did. Now, how does that play out in Esav as a Russian Marusha? He's a totally wicked person. How does it come to be that he is so meticulous in kibbud av v'em? Some say, listen, we see this with Jews sometimes. They have no connection to Judaism, but there's one mitzvah they're going to hold on to. Whether for them it's charity, for some it's Israel, for some it's... I've seen people... it was not religious at all, but he wears tzitzis, because wherever the word tzitzis, that's part of who he is, and that's his mitzvah, and he feels very proud of it. And I'm not minimizing, that's a good thing. So you could say Esav had his mitzvah. That was his mitzvah. But others learned, I think Rav Dessler amongst them, that it was a little more insidious than that. Esav's honor of his parents is kind of based on like the same honor amongst thieves. Thieves don't really have honor, but they honor each other only because it's only they can survive. Otherwise, you're going to stab me in the back. So we have to honor each other. Simply, it's a self-serving thing. Honor amongst thieves, not because I really truly believe in honor. It's self-serving, because if I don't honor you, you're going to stab me in the back, right? Esav honored his father. You know why? Because he wanted his kids to serve him. He only honored his father because he just wanted his kids to be servicing him. It was totally for self-serving motives. So Esav, when he sees all these children, so he sees, wow, that's a lot of power here. But Yaakov, you're not into power. So Yaakov says, you're right. Asher chanani Elokim. We see children entirely different. I once heard somebody once say that there are people that want $5 million, and the people that want 5 children. And the people that get 5 children are happier than the people that want $5 million. Why? Because the people that have $5 million will always want more. Meaning, when it comes to children, they won't want more, right? They have enough. So they're happier but that's not true. That's not the Jewish viewpoint. It's sad in the secular world. I'm just reading the article the other day. Little Japan is literally imploding because there's no continuation of children. In fact, not only that, it's really sad that they're so into consuming and producing even, but in a consumer way, that there's a whole new, there's a whole business enterprise where people come in to clean up the houses of people that die because there's nobody to take care of them. Literally, that's what it is, a whole enterprise. It was an article just the other day. It's sad, but they're seeing there's no continuity, there's no children, literally that. And we see the opposite. We see every child as a gift, not just a gift, a responsibility. We all know that when Amram was thinking of not having more children, because he said, how can I bring them into this Holocaust? How can I bring them into Mitzrayim? So Miriam said, we all know what Miriam said. Miriam said, you're worse than Paro. Paro just wants to kill them physically. And you want to rob them of Olam Haba. What she's really saying is, you missed the point. Having children is not just about raising in this world. Having children is developing a soul. You're granting them, you're developing their Olam Haba. We're not just raising children to have them in this world, which we are, but we're also raising children because we want to give them Olam Haba. And we want to give them mitzvahs here so they can have their Olam Haba. So Yaakov says, Asher Chanani Elokim. These children I see are charges and responsibility that God gave me and graced me with. It's a whole different view of children and a whole different view of wealth. Rav versus Kol is a huge difference. Is it about mass and more stuff? Well, Kol, I see everything as part of a purpose, and it's what I need. Okay, so that's the exchange that takes place. But before this exchange takes place, we know that actually one more thing I'll mention with the exchange. It says when Yaakov and Esav meet each other, they give each other hugs, right? It says Vayichabkeyu, he hugged him, Vayashkeyu, and he kissed him. I think I pointed this out once. I don't remember anymore. In last week's parsha with Lavan, the same thing happened too. When Lavan meets Yaakov first time, Vayichabkeyu, he hugs him, Vayashkeyu, and he kisses him. Right? Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that later on, fast forward in Parshas Vayechi, when Yaakov wants to give a blessing to his grandchildren, it says, when he sees Yosef, he kisses him and he hugs him. The reverse. Again, by Lavan and by Esav it says, he hugged him and he kissed him. By Yaakov it says, he kissed him and he hugged him. It's clearly different. And it would seem to be that obviously Esav and Lavan, who they are very selfish people, would have a different approach than Yaakov's approach. A hug really is you're bringing somebody into yourself. A kiss is you're giving to somebody else. So for Lavan and Esav, it's first about me. Let me bring you into me. The hug, so to speak, it's an act of taking in a certain sense. I'm taking for myself. Whereas the kiss is conveying to somebody else. Whereas for Yaakov, the kiss comes first. It's just an interesting side point. Okay, but let's go back a little bit. Before Yaakov meets Esav, we know there's a trial run where Yaakov goes across the river to get back to Pach Mutanim. Vayivasa Yaakov Levado. Yaakov is left alone. He's left standing alone, and that's when the angel of Esav comes and attacks him. So this Vayivasa Yaakov Levado, it says two things: that he was vulnerable because he was alone. In fact, the sages tell us that a righteous person should never travel alone at night. He should always have some sort of shomer with him. But it also speaks of Vayivasa Yaakov Levado. The Torah tells us this is kind of a play on the words, if you will, of Ki Niskav Hashem Levado, that God is glorious by himself. In other words, Vayivasa Yaakov Levado speaks about the greatness of the Jewish people, in that we and they were then and we are now able to maintain our unique identity, despite the calls of others to assimilate, to make us deny our uniqueness. But the fact that we're able to remain levado certainly is our hallmark of our strength, but certainly also antagonizes and creates all this friction. But that's how we remain separate, so to speak. But the Vayivasa Yaakov Levado speaks of the greatness of the Jewish people, that they were able to do what the right thing is and not necessarily feel governed by that which is around them. And today very often we assume whatever's popular must be right. And we don't necessarily opt for the most popular thing. I went to a sign in a mess tent, an army tent. It said, "This food must be good. 10,000 flies can't be wrong." Right? So we often associate popularity with right. It's not the case at all. And the Niskavash of Yaakov Levado that was able to stand alone represents this concept that we're able to be independent and do what's right, not what's necessarily popular. But that's what automatically antagonizes Esav, or the angel, and that's why he attacks him. Right? You want to be alone? No. And he attacks him. You had a question? Yes, go on.
Isn't that very similar to what Haman used to describe Jews?
He said mefuzar mefurid. That's scattered. He was actually saying the opposite. He was saying that they're not unified. Yesh la'amach mefuzar mefurid means they're scattered and they're not unified. What?
He used the word echad.
Yesh la'am echad, but he says mefuzar mefurid.
Unique.
Interesting. Okay. But I hear that. That's an interesting question, actually. But mefuzar mefurid really points out they're scattered. They're almost not united. But you're right. Why would it say yesh la'am echad, which is the opposite? That's an interesting point. I got to think about. That's a very good point. I have to think about that. Okay. So Esav attacks Yaakov because Yaakov maintains the position of being solitary and being able to be alone, and they have this wrestling match. We all know the story. The angel can't defeat Yaakov, so he hits him on the thigh, and Yaakov ends up limping home. All right, we're going to talk about this in a few moments. I just want to mention two things. Number one, it says Vayar ki lo yachalo. It says the angel saw that he could not defeat Esav. If you take a look on page 174, 175, it's Pasuk Vav. It's the last line on 174. Literally, first words. Vayar ki lo yachalo, and he saw, meaning the angel saw that he could not defeat him. Vayiga b'kafi reicho, and he hit him at the what does it say? He struck the socket of his hip. Vateka kafi yerach Yaakov, and the Yaakov's hip became displaced, and he limps. So two things. It's fascinating. It says he could not defeat Yaakov. Now this is obviously this is not WWF going over. This is not a wrestling match and your two fat jlubs fighting it out. This is a wrestling of ideas. These are ideologies that are clashing. Esav, or the angel of Esav, sees he can't defeat Yaakov's ideology, so he hits him. That's the biggest proof that he can't defeat him. We see kids sometimes when they argue with each other, it's mine, and one guy can't make the convincing arguments, what do? He hits the other guy. That's a sign of frustration, that I haven't been able to convince you, so the hit is the biggest proof that I've been defeated. The fact that Esav has to hit Yaakov is the biggest proof that he can't defeat him. But we're guilty of that also sometimes. In relationships, let's say husband and wife, and there's a clash of ideas. And you're frustrated that you're not being. It doesn't mean ideas. It could be something simple like you want to go on vacation to Florida. She wants to visit her in-laws in Nebraska, right? Whatever the case is, and you're fighting, right? And you're not getting anywhere. So then what you do is no, you always insist we go to. You always and your parents. And what we do is we do the exact same thing Asa did, which
you can't hit that.
Right. You go to a place where you shouldn't be going. Just like Asa really. This is not. If there's a clash in ideology, why are you hitting me? If you're having a serious argument about what the right thing to do is, so why are you hitting below the belt in your argument with somebody else? We unfortunately do that ourselves sometimes, and when we're supposed to have an argument, an intelligent argument, and try to win the war of ideas. When we can't do that because we get frustrated, we start hitting when we shouldn't be hitting, and we start saying things. Well, you're this, you're always that, and we. Out of frustration, we try to win the war in the way that the war was not meant to be argued. It's a battle of ideas. Keep it to a battle of ideas. But often when we get frustrated, we will resort to something else, and that's what Esav does over here as well. He gets frustrated, so to speak, the angel, and he hits Yaakov. Now he hits him in the thigh. We all know that's why we don't eat the gid hanasha, right? The gid hanasha, that's sinew, that's special sinew, and that's why you really can get a good sirloin steak in America, because it's a very labored process to pull that sinew out. In Eretz Yisrael, I point out, what?
The eating of the not eating of the gid hanasha, is it a commandment by God, or is the way it says here? Okay,
right. So the Rambam specifically states that even though it says over here, that's why the Jews don't eat the gid hanasha, the Rambam says the Torah wrote that after the Torah was given at Sinai. The reason why we don't eat the sinew is because at Sinai God said don't eat sinew. This is not a custom that we took upon ourselves. This is one of the mitzvot, clearly. But the question is, why not? Just because Yaakov was hitting that thigh, why don't we eat from that? So Kabbalah says, interesting thing, Kabbalah says actually, every food has some spark of holiness that we extract and make a bracha. When this was displaced, it means the spark is no longer there. So to eat what's called a klipa, to eat a shell that doesn't have a spark, it's counterproductive and it's unhealthy. Spiritually. No, the food itself now has lost that spark of kedusha that normally we ingest. It's not there anymore. But the Sforno has a much more simple idea on a more relatable level. He says, that sinew reminds us of the defeat of Yaakov in a certain sense. We don't dwell on defeat. We toss it out. We don't keep the defeat on our table. We learn from our mistakes and we move forward, but we don't dwell on defeat. It's a really positive attitude that we're not going to dwell on defeat. Yeah, Yaakov got hit for whatever reason over there. It's out of the picture now. We don't deal with it. As far as we simply don't deal with defeat, we move further. We learn lessons from it, but we don't certainly dwell on that defeat.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry. Once I heard that this meant that it affected the Yaakov's children. What Esau
Yes.
did?
Yes. Yeah, because he hit it by the thigh, which is also a place of the reproductive organ. And Esau was trying to hit the future generations because he couldn't get Yaakov, so let him hit the future generations. That is one explanation. There's a Zohar that says something else, and every fundraiser has to know the Zohar. The Zohar says the thigh represents the support of the body. And Esau said, okay, I can't hit the Torah scholars, but I'll hit the support system. Those that are supposed to support Torah, I'll get them not to support Torah. All right, that's Zohar actually learns that. But there are many different explanations of what it represents. I want to get to one point, then I'll take a question.
No, I'm sorry. Not a question.
Oh, okay. But you realize, had you done this at an auction, you would have bought the painting. That counts, you know? All right? All right, anyway, bottom line like this. When you have a question? Yeah.
So, when Yaakov got in the, when he got hit.
I'm scared. These questions are the hardest questions.
I know.
Yeah.
When he got hit, when they were fighting, why didn't he get hit while they were fighting? Why only once?
Why did you hit only once?
Yeah, why did he hit only?
That's a great question. This is not like a wrestling match, where they're coming to blows. So it means that Esau hit him with this idea. Now, Esau hit him in one place. He found his Achilles heel, so to speak. Esau found that one weak spot. So that's what it means, right? He could have had. And you're right. In the wrestling match, there'd be many blows, but this is not a physical match. How do you wrestle with an angel? An angel's not physical, right? So it wasn't really a physical match, but it means he was able to hit him, in his weak spot. And by the way, the Zohar also says that this also applies not just to the weak spot of Yaakov, but the weak spot of the Jewish people, because we know there are 365 sinews. Each one corresponds to a day of the year, and this sinew corresponds to Tisha B'Av. The weak spot of the Jewish people is that 9th day of Av, which always lives on in infamy, and this sinew corresponds to that day. But let's back it up a little bit. I want to talk about the wrestling match for a little bit, and that's because that's really very important. So it says Yaakov takes his 11 children across the river, and he's left alone. By the way, Rashi points out, hey, where's Dinah? Why is 11 children? There should be 12. Do the math. There were 11 boys born. Binyamin wasn't born yet, but Dinah was born, so that would make 12. Why does the Torah only say, if you look in verse Chav Gimel 23, right? It says he got up that night, took his 2 wives, his 2 handmaids, and his 11 sons. What happened to Dinah? So we all know Rashi says that Yaakov hid Dinah from view because Esau would have seen her how beautiful she was. He might have abducted her, and he wanted to protect her.
Yeah, he made a mistake.
Oh, sorry? And Rashi tells us that Yaakov was punished for that because because she might have been able to turn Esau around. And the obvious question is, doesn't a father have a responsibility to protect his child? Should he really put him in his vulnerable position because Esau might have been able to turn around? So I want to share with you just one thought. Before that, I want to share with you a little story. I may have shared, I remember. Many years ago, the principal, there was a big, like a teaching seminar in Baltimore. And the principal insisted that all of us go to this teaching seminar. He gave us off the half a day. And he knew that I'm just not into this stuff. It just doesn't appeal to me. All these instructions. But he said, you must go. So they give you a menu of classes, and you pick your class, and there's all, teaching instruction. So there's one class that's called How to Make Your Classroom More Exciting. I figured, okay, that could be pretty good. I sit in the class, it's the most boring presentation. I'm not exaggerating. Boring. Drove me nuts. So after 5 minutes, what do you do as a kid? You go to the bathroom, right? So I said, I gotta leave. So I walk out, and I'm walking the hallway, and I see the principal who's walking the halls to make sure they were all going to class. So I quickly duck into another room, and I open the door, and Rav Erdman Zatzal, who's the Rosh Yeshiva, who was the Rosh Yeshiva of Ner Yisrael, who's a famous rabbi, was giving a speech or teaching, I think 300 or 400 Jewish women teachers in the Beis Yaakov building in Baltimore. Now, as soon as I walk in, they all give me these stares, you don't belong here. But I'm thinking, you know what? I don't belong here, but he's going to have something intelligent to say. So until they throw me out, I'm staying here. So I stand inside the room, and Rav Erdman asked this exact question. This is a fun question. He says, let's work this out. Yaakov was held accountable because maybe Dinah could have turned Esav around. Who was Esav's grandfather? Abraham. Who was his father? Yitzchak. Who was his brother? Yaakov. All-star lineup. You're not getting a more holier lineup on the planet. Doesn't exist. And they couldn't do anything with him. And Dinah couldn't turn him around. We said that's the power of a wife. Power of a wife. What Dinah could have turned an Esav around where Abraham, Yitzchak couldn't. Fascinating. And then, by the way, they threw me out, but it was worth it. It was worth it just to hear that one point. That was a valuable point. There's a famous joke, maybe somebody knows the joke. It's a true story, but it's a joke. I forgot who it was, the governor of Texas. You know the story? The governor of Texas was traveling around with his wife, and they stopped to get gas, and the gas head is pumping the gas, and all of a sudden the wife starts like chuckling. So the husband goes, "You know this guy?" She like, "No, no, no." He goes, "You know this guy?" So finally he said, "One second, you dated this guy?" She goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You dated this? I mean, you could have been the wife of a guy who's pumping gas?" She goes, "No, actually, he could have been governor." So that's the power of a wife. That's what it is. Okay, but let's go back to the original question, which was, did Yaakov do anything wrong as a father? Should he? And the answer is, of course, he should have protected Dinah. It wasn't what he did, but how he did it. In other words, what he should have said, I feel so bad that I couldn't help my brother Esav in this case, especially an obligation to a brother. Forget about anybody. This is a brother. It's a beautiful balancing act that Torah demands of us. You could do one action and still feel bad, and that's the right action, and still feel bad that you didn't do the other action. In other words, you have to be able to take into account emotion and action at the same time. The action you did, Yaakov, was the right action. You had to protect Dinah, but at the same time, that means you develop a little bit of an insensitivity. Your brother, your own brother, this is his last gasp effort. Don't you feel at least bad? You find the reverse of this as well. Literally the reverse. When let's say you buy something new, a new dress, a new suit, a new car, to get you excited, so you make a Shechianu blessing, right? Halacha is, you buy a new leather coat, you don't make a Shechianu blessing. Even though it excites you. Because even though you have a right to the action to kill the animal,